Hello people, welcome back to my channel. So hope you are enjoying this Python skill series so far. So in today's video we'll be seeing about or we'll be covering the third section or third part of pandas that is necessary for data science for all your activities for machine learning. So that is we have the data summarization that is done in pandas for data processing. So before this we have seen what was filtering and sorting and how it is done, different operations, and so we saw a few examples on the data set that we have, that is on Ola rides 2018, what we can do to provide certain insights. So before I begin with this today's session, let me remind you that is there is a link about this pandas. So this is all about the data frame that all the information if you want about different methods, functions, constructors, and all those things, you do slicing and stuffs like that. So for that you have this particular link. So I suggest you, like, whenever you get the time or whenever you are free or whenever you are traveling or whenever you find it like to go through this particular site, you are welcome. Uh, so this has a rich library and different kinds of different things which you can know, like, although I cannot like mention each and everything from this. So but when we'll be doing certain kind of activities or programs, we'll obviously be covering these kind of stuffs. So just make sure like you have a look on this. So the more you look over this and more you practice, so you get some insights. So day by day you will start your profile for data scientist or anything else towards which starts with data with this. Okay, so let's begin today's session. So first we have the data summarization, that is our topic. So we have three main discussions that is going over this. So I'll make sure like I'll keep this discussion as small as possible, else it will be long and it will be sometimes boring. But for coding, you should not say it will be boring, but then you have to see how it is being practiced. Okay, so we start first the discussion of the usage of group by function with the aggregate function. So usually we write the group by function and then we put an aggregate function at the end. Like aggregate functions, if you know from the other database programming knowledges, if you know about that, aggregate functions are nothing but the mean, average, min, max, standard deviation, and stuffs like that. Or you have the count and many stuffs like that. So we'll be not doing all of these things, but we'll be doing few of the things which are required for our analysis purpose. Okay, so first of all, we have this data set that is Ola rights 2008, and I have my data set that is ready, that is Ola rights 2018, and just make sure that you are connected to the system, collaboratory, everything is there in place. Okay, so let's start. So first of all, how the syntax or what how it is written basically. So you call the group by method, and in that say I want to group by with the destination. Like I want to see all the results or all the uh, values with the help of the destination. So and to that I'm passing an aggregate function, that is the mean. So what it will give you is like, okay, hmm, okay, so I have to write this, import pandas as pd, and if I run this, okay, then df is equal to pd dot to csv, pd dot read csv. Okay, and inside this we have to write that this once in a while, because we are using this. And okay, hope this should work now. Okay, and if I run this, there you go. So you get this destination. So destination is where you end your trip, and based upon that you get two different values. Now why two different values? Because if you see in your data set, you have this miles and price per miles. So those are the two numeric columns, and by default if you apply this uh, mean function, so that works on these two columns. So it is as simple as that. So the alternate way to write this is like you can call the aggregate function, and to this aggregate function you can pass a string that is the mean. And so if you run this, you again get the same result. So as I wrote this comment, group by will work on non-numeric and aggregate is on numeric. So group by, like, usually you take or do the group by on a column which is non-numeric, that is a string valued, and aggregate will be on the numeric column. So here by default the compiler will do all the aggregate of, like, to perform the averages on all the numeric columns which is present in your dataset. And so the default for all the numeric columns, and this particular thing, that is this thing what I've written, that is we have seen in most of the other operations. So this is nothing but the object on the fly. If you know Java programming language, there it is called as object on the go or object on the fly. So similar kind of thing, instead of doing this in two separate lines, we do in a one liner. So it is as simple as that. So if I, like, say write min, it is giving some kind of error because it's unable to differentiate on what kind of columns it has to apply. So it basically works with this mean. So if you write mean or with this, so mean is the most widely used thing that you uh, see in data science. So mostly in almost all of the data analysis purposes, you want to take the average of the column. So it's like data scientists used in a very like often, very often they use this. So they want to have in a more liberal way or liberal approach to this method. So that's why they have this mean function exclusively to run on this kind of data set. So it will fetch you, or it will give you this particular restricted view. So this is nothing but a summary of the data that you are getting from the entire large data set. Okay, so let us move on to, like, now this mean, when you applied it, by default applied to the entire uh, data set. So whatever numeric values or real valued columns were there, it just applied there. Now what if I want to individual columns? I just want only to the miles, or I just want only to price per miles. So how do we do that? So for that, it is just a simple line that you add before the aggregate function and after the group by function. So that is nothing but the data frame on which you want to apply, or the column which you want to apply. So you have in this way. So first is that I applied on the miles column, that is the miles data frame. So if I run this, you get this output. So the difference in this output and this output, what you can see above, this is a data frame and this is a series. So whenever you do this kind of things just for summarization on one particular column, so that result is nothing but a series result. And if I just comment this and if I run this, that is nothing but on price per miles. So similarly you get this. So you can do more operations over this so that you understand it more better. So next we move on to our second discussion, that is we have the multiple grouping. Like in the previous video we saw what was multiple sorting on multiple columns. We can modify this particular statement to work on multiple group bys. So on multiple group bys, we put a list of the other columns where we wish to apply these functions, not single function, but we can pass n number of different functions, like along with mean, min, average, standard deviation, and stuffs like that. Let's have a look on that. So first of all, we have this df.groupby function, and to that I'm passing a list. So whenever if you have two or more columns, So you basically pass a list. So list can be easily sliced, or you can easily access the list element by using the LOC function or ILOC function. So for that you basically use, but just keep a habit that you always put a list whenever if you are even accessing one particular element, so that you don't forget this thing, that is this square brackets, else it will throw some error and you will be fumbling what will be the error. So this is one particular suggestion that I follow to keep, even if it is one particular column, make sure like you put this square brackets. Next, we have this same aggregate function over to this data frame, and we apply the mean, sum, and the min. So these are the three things that our customer wants from source and destination. He wants the mean, sum, and minimum. So, and I do a head at the end of this, so I get this particular kind of result. If I remove this and if I just run this, you get these many entries. So but if you just notice this view is somewhat different, or the way the result is shown is somewhat different than we saw earlier. So what's basic the difference is, so you can see there are some like, if like see I have highlighted this particular cell, so you can see like there is some highlight that is shown in a different way. So why this happens, because this is a nested table. So in DBMS or in database management systems, you have this nesting of tables, nf square, enf square, partition, normal form, and stuffs like that. So it is basically use that. So on source, one value is like agnew to agnew, and from Agnew to Kori, you have one. Agnew to Renaissance, you have one destination. So it's like nesting. This is 1:1, 1:2, 1:3. So this kind of nested table you get as a result of when you apply multiple grouping. So we want to avoid this. Else, because the result will be cluttered and it won't give you some meaningful insights, or you can't draw any relevant results or decisions based upon this particular kind of result. So for that we have a small activity. For this it will not take much time. So our major requirement is we want to find the first ride and the last ride along with the average distance from where the trip has started. Let us divide this particular requirement or problem statement into two parts. So we want to find the first ride and the last ride. So first ride and the last ride will be done when? It will be done only that point of time, when we have the date and when we have the uh, time. So that is nothing but your from and to. So if you are clear over this, we want to find the first ride. So first ride is nothing but your minimum from the aggregate function, and last ride is your maximum. So you have to use these two aggregate functions. And there is one more condition, that is you have to find the average distance, and you don't have any average distance over this, but you have some column like you have this miles. So that can be considered as a distance, or that in fact is a distance that has different terminology here. So in different way our requirement has come, and we have to find the average distance. Now it should be done from where the trip has started, means from the source. Trip has started means from where the source, depend from the source, you have to do this kind of grouping. So this is some a weird kind of grouping that we are going to do, but I'll explain in a step by step manner. It will be easier. Just pay attention to the screen. Okay, so first of all, just look at this portion. Just don't see into the next cell. Okay, so first of all, what we have is when we look into our data set, so it has around 1156 number of entries. And if I do a control function end on my keyboard, I'll see like my record ends at this particular thing which I highlighted. But below that, you have some two more entries. So my data frame reads this as like this value as it is, this value as it is, but here it will be NaN, and all these columns as all these records as NaN. So what I want to do is I want to discard this particular uh, column that I've highlighted, because they don't have any date column that is associated. So this is nothing but your totals that you get from this miles and price per miles. So I don't want it for my calculation, else it will give me some results which will not match, or it will lead to wrong insights. So how will I change that? So not every time I can go in my data set and do the removal. Like on the data set, if I go and remove, then it will be very tedious activity if I have too many rows. Now this was just because I had a one particular instance of this. So if I had many of these instances, then every time when I import my data set, then I have to remodify my data set and then I have to add it. So instead of that, we have learned one coding technique. So that was nothing but slicing. If you remember the list video, so from that we mainly use the slicing. So slicing can be done on list, and so data frame itself is a list. So we can do the slicing operation. Now, how the slicing is done here? So slicing, if you remember, it takes three parameters. So first parameter is your start, second is your stop, and third one is your step. And from this, start and step is optional, but stop you have to mention. So here what I'm doing is I am modifying this df, like I am stopping it as -1. So from the last, the first instance, so this is the last, from last the first instance will be discarded. So that's what I'm doing here. So that is basically slicing. You can do with ilog or log. That is an assignment to you. If you are able to get this, and if you perform all the operation, then it should get the same result. So after I do the slicing, so before that, let me run this, and I'm storing this. So what I'm doing is here, now if I run this, you can see like the last entry has been removed. So the last entry was, it ends at 1156. So just make sure like 48.2 and 251 is shown here. Yes, that's correct. So this is the result of the slicing that we have done. Now we have to put into a data frame. So for that, I have put this dfn is equal to this way. Now comes our actual task. So now, so these three things what we do here are nothing but our data processing, pre-processing. So before we apply the group by, we have to do some modifications in our data set, else it will throw some kind of error. So this is the first thing from the data set that we have done. So that is basically filtering or the removal that we do, slicing. Next thing what we can see is like we have encountered this before. So I have given an introduction to the to date time method before. So these things, so if I go here and if I do df dot d types here, see, so from here you get to know like the from column, that is nothing but this column, and this column, that is 2, both are in object, but we want to convert it into a date time. So else it will throw some error when we do the group by. So for that we do the so this is the syntax of how it is written, and we know that is errors is equal to coerce is a universal fix for all the errors that is thrown by this kind of conversion. So this is a thing which you should always do. So this thing you can by heart. So every time if you do this thing, just put the errors is equal to course as this optional parameter, but it's very handy. So that I do for the from column, and that I do for the to column. So first we have done the data pre-processing for this activity by slicing, then we have done the conversion to date time from the object. Next after this I run this particular line. Okay, so this is not any error, but it is just the result that you run from this. So you can read this. These are the documentations. So that is nothing but the conversions which you have done. It's because of that. Okay, so now our pre-processing is done. Now to our actual task. So somewhere in some operations you have to do the data pre-processing, and then only you can do the group by, especially in data summarizations, where some columns or some rows may not be proper. There you have to do this kind of activities. So we'll be learning everything in a new video step by step, not everything in one. Okay, so now what I want to do is, based upon this df1 which contains my pre-processed as well as the type casted columns to date time. Now I want to group by. Now my question says first ride and the last ride. First ride was when I did my trip or booked my trip at the very first. So first ride will be from. So basically I'll explain this in this way. So uh, you have to group this thing based upon your source and destination. So that thing you have to take the requirement from the customer or from who may be doing this particular job. So it may be either with respect to only one particular column, it may be with respect to either source, or it will be either with respect to destination. So whenever you do the group by, that is usually on the non-numeric column, that is the categorical attribute which you do. So that is basically a list. So here I am showing for two different columns, and to this I am putting the aggregate function. Now just have a look over this aggregate function, how it is basically written. So if I read my question, that is I want to, so this is the actual implementation that is done in aggregate function. So I want to find the average distance from where the trip started. So average distance is nothing but the mean distance of the miles. So, and then on the aggregate function, I have to do one more thing, that I want to find the first and the last rides from the start date, or from the date my trip started. So what I did is, uh, basically this is the thing that does the average stuff. So on the miles column I want to do the mean, because it is written as average distance. So miles is my distance column, and to that I'm passing mean. So this construct or this syntax which you can see, this is nothing but a dictionary. So it takes key value pairs. To key I'm passing the string, and value is nothing but a list. So that is possible. Yeah. And second thing that I want is, I want the first and the last rate. First and the last rate will be from date. So on from date I'll be basically doing the min and the max. So min will be the first rate, and the last rate for the max. And then I have did one more activity, like on price per miles I'll be doing the calculating the mean. So that's not required, but we'll see like how it is done. Okay, so now what I do is, okay, let me comment this thing. Okay, so I have this thing here. So you can see this is the result that we get. So this is again, this resembles to this particular result. So that is nothing but our nested table, that is in normal form or partition normal form. So we have to do some kind of modifications here, that will be seeing next in a couple of seconds what we have to do. So it is like Agnew to Agnew, Agnew to Corey, Agnew to Renaissance, and similarly to Whitebridge from West Park Place and things like this. So there are 362 rows and 4 more columns with this. So we want to do the group by over this here. So what I want to do is, I want to reset the index here. So before this also we have discussed about resetting the index, that concept. So on result, I'll be basically doing the resetting of the index. So and in place is equal to true because uh, as and when you do the resetting, it has to be index has to be renamed on the go. So for that we write in place is equal to true. If I run this, you get that, so it appears to be less cluttered as before. So that is uh, what I done or implemented with the help of reset index. So it will start the index from 0 and up till all where the condition gets satisfied. Now what I want to do is, so if you just look over this, this is somewhat shifted, so that doesn't make any difference, but instead, so this is what we get. So this is our result basically. So from source destination, what we write here, so that is the group by, and miles, on miles we have the mean, that is the average, and on from we have the minimum, that is the first trip, and max, that is the last trip, that is the recent trip, and then you have the price miles, on that we have taken the mean. So now what you want to do is you want to rename this in a much proper way, because this is nested in one level, because in from you have min, from you have max, and rest all things you can infer, but you can rename the columns in a better way. So for that we have one more technique, that is we will do the renaming of the columns. So mind you, this is not a method that how you reset the index, but it will be on res dot columns. So you have this syntax that is written here, that is res dot columns, and to that columns what you basically pass is a list of new column names that you want to reflect onto your modified data frame. So how will you pass that? So first thing which you pass is the source and destination that you have here in group by. So that will be these two columns which you can see. Then the result of miles will be, that is the average distance, so that I renamed as AGGDST, and a star represents that it is the modified one. And then from the this, that is the from, that is on the date I have minimum and maximum. So for these two aggregate functions, I have this first trip, and then I have the latest trip or the last trip, and then on the price per miles I have the aggregate price per miles. So whatever result you get from the aggregate function, in correspondence to that you have to put this list. And after I do this, and if I run this, I get the modified result in a much better representation. So this gives a better summarization of the result as opposed to the nested thing. So you can see that this is all in a normalized format. There is no nesting. It can be easily represented or can be presented to the customer. So it is easier for you to understand like what these things basically are. And say for example, if I remove this and if I don't want this according to my problem definition, uh, I don't want this particular price miles. So if I remove this and if I run this but I don't change over here, so see just what kind of error that I am getting. So here I am getting, that is the value error, and if you read the description, that is the length mismatch that is happening, because expected element has 5 elements and the new element have 6 elements. So how, so what is the explanation? And so I can explain this in this way. So this is a source, this is the destination, this is the mean. For this you have the new column, for this you have two new columns, but you have one additional column, but for which you are not performing any aggregate operations. So gradually you have to remove this, and probably if you run this, then you can get your result. So that one key value thing which you put here, or either if you add here or if you don't remove here, either in way vice versa you get that particular error. So make sure in accordance with this aggregate functions and plus this group by, you have to rename the columns. So well, that was all regarding this third discussion or the third part of data summarization on pandas. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you found you got educated from this video, please do like, share, comment, and if you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching this video.